So today I was doing a bit of an experiment with AC power and capacitors, just trying to learn a little bit more about how they work. And actually my goal, or the hypothesis to test, was since a capacitor is two isolated pieces of metal with a lot of surface area between them, would that mean that if I put a capacitor in line with live and in line with neutral, if I touch live and touched earth ground, would I get shocked? Because technically my body would be not making contact with actual live, but with the live coming out of the capacitor, which is a separate plate. Of course, I didn't test this by actually touching them. Instead, I went through a series of tests where I measured the short circuit current after the capacitor and the open circuit voltage and all that. And then, so after I concluded that the capacitors, they're they're just 3 microfarads each. So that'd be a 6 microfarad if you shorted live to neutral. It has to go through both. Capacitors only pass the amount of current which they can hold on those two plates, right? So it looked like about half an amp that would be alternating with the short circuit current using both 3 microfarad capacitors. Alright, so half an amp is a much more reasonable thing to test than like 20 from the breaker. So I put a 1 kilo ohm resistor from live to earth ground. I wanted to see, because if you do this with a transformer and you put a load between live and earth ground, all the voltage will just vanish. It'll disappear, no current will flow, or it'll be an extremely small current. It'll be safe. Basically, that's so that as a person I can touch earth ground or just be standing on the ground and touch live on the secondary side of the isolation transformer, and I won't get hurt because the secondary voltage is not referenced to earth ground. And as you can see from the color on that resistor, whenever I plugged it in, there was a significant voltage drop across the resistor, and I wasn't measuring that current, but I think it was about half an amp. So yeah, there was a significant amount of current to earth ground. So the conclusion is that the capacitor can't really fill the same role as a transformer in safety isolation, though it can limit the current because of the size of the plates. If you have really tiny plates that are charging up, like earlier I put these 0.1 microfarad capacitors in series, and when I short circuited it, I actually saw like 0 current. It didn't even register, but they weren't getting hot. It wasn't like resistors or something. So yeah, so the conclusion is that the capacitors don't isolate in an AC circuit. They don't isolate like they do, or like a transformer does. So kind of a high level topic, but I mean, you just don't know until you test it. So hopefully you learned something, and if you're going to conduct any tests like this, you need to, don't just go off of my example. I mean, definitely don't be messing with high voltage, anything above 50 volts, unless you have someone else to check what you're doing, or you really pay attention to safety. So yeah, that's just a warning. But other than that, hopefully you learned something.